Rae, founder of HomWork, HomWork.com. That's where you can live where you work where you live, anywhere in the world. And today I have the pleasure of taping from the beautiful Skirball Theater in Los Angeles. But I have the pleasure of speaking with Sandra Rae, who is a real estate investor. She's a super host as well as an author of not just one, but a couple books. The one we're going to discuss today is The Use of Change. Is that correct, Sandra?
Well, change of use, but yeah, pretty much.
Yes, change of use. Thank you. Thank you. Tell us more about you, how you got involved in real estate, and I mean, you have so many more talents than I mentioned. So tell us a little about it.
Okay. Well, first off, I have been doing real estate for pretty actively now for about 3 years, but it's not my first time to the rodeo. I first started learning about it about 10 years ago and decided that, yeah, this is what I want to do. It's not the only thing I do. As you know, I'm also a writer, so I live a double life. I'm a writer on one side, and then I do the real estate stuff on the other side. So I keep busy. But what attracts me to it, I don't really know what initially attracts people to it, but for me, I think it was the idea of fixing and flipping properties, which if you think about what I do, it's a really slow flip kind of a deal because I deal in short-term rentals. And at the end of the day, one of the things that you want to do is think about the exit strategy, which is of course going to be selling in a market that would be good for selling. So that's really a slow flip because I'll go in, I'll take a property, I'll rehab it, helping the seller out because this typically when I take an asset, the seller is in trouble. They can't make their mortgage payment. They have some personal issues or whatever. And I end up taking the property over time using a lease purchase option kind of strategy and rehabbing it, fixing it up, making it great, renting it out as a short-term rental for a while, and then selling it. And that's what I'm going to be doing to one of the properties here, probably in January. So I think what really got me interested was the fix and flipping, but then I learned different strategies and went from there. So I guess that's the answer.
It's a wonderful answer. But that's what's so beautiful about real estate. There's so many ways you can get involved in it, whether it's from investing in fix and flip or long term, and you can do, all the different things that you can do with it because you have to be flexible. And even you have one home that you said that you're actually going to convert into a senior living, or tell us about that. So tell us about what the change of use is about and what prompted you to do that and what have you found?
Sure. Actually, the change of use came from a simple conversation that I had with somebody that I was working with. And I wanted to help a seller and I didn't know what to do with the property because at the time I really hadn't thought about change of use. And this was about 2.5, almost 3 years ago. And he mentioned, hey, why don't you try renting it out to a specific group of people? And I started thinking, hey, why don't I do that? So I started looking into different strategies for this house in Mission Viejo. It's a big, beautiful 6-bedroom house. You've seen it. It's got all the stuff, great for group home, great for what you're doing. But anyway, it's a great house for all sorts of purposes. But, there's some purposes it wouldn't be good for. So we initially wanted to make it into a sober living home. The neighbors kind of caught wind of it and didn't want that, started giving us anonymous letters and such like that. So I figured out short-term rental, just by fluke. I found vacation rental housing to be very profitable. It worked out great for that house for a while, up until a few months ago. And then we are, just because of the HOA issues that I want everybody to understand, HOAs do have power here. They didn't want us to do this. So now I have the choice of either changing the use to something else or selling it. And since the market is ripe for selling, we're going to sell. So that's one house. But then you've been to the other house that's been really good as a short-term rental as well. And then I have my own house, is the one you're talking about, changing the use of it from my primary residence to become an independent living home for seniors. And this is different than an assisted living because assisted living, you have to have certification, licensure. You really have to know your stuff. I mean, I have taken some training and all that, and I have friends who run these. But the independent living home is completely different. It's kind of the level under the assisted living, and it's really a cool space. And you can provide senior housing with a manager, a house manager in place, or staff if you don't want to have somebody living there because the house isn't big enough. You can have staff in place 24 hours so that nobody is cooking or cleaning themselves, because that's the worry that somebody at a certain age will burn down the house. And that just is the main concern from people I'm talking to who want to rent these spaces for their family members.
So, for example, what's the size of the house, and then how many bedrooms would be in a room? Because I hear you like that 8 house or 10, whatever. And then what would you be for that? And we've been doing it that way, single family, renting it to a single family.
Okay, first off, why I got interested in the change of use is because the profitability is tremendous. Whatever you're looking at, if you can rent by the bed or by the room or by the house, to a specific group of people, you're going to make a lot more money than if you were to just rent traditionally. But with that said, I want to make sure that people understand that if you don't have a heart for doing senior housing, don't do it. If you don't have a heart for sober living, don't do it. Just because you have to have beyond the money, you have to have an interest in doing it. And you all, for myself, I have my own reasons. Transparently, my father passed in a hospital holding the hand of a nurse, a stranger. That should never happen. So I became interested in assisted living, but there's so much certification and licensure and all that stuff required that the independent living is just a little bit easier. And you don't have to have a specific size of a house, because you can have shared rooms, like you can have 2 twin beds in one room. But when you're dealing with seniors, maybe they want their own space. So this house here is about 2,200 square feet. It's got an entertainment room. It's got a view of the lake. It has 4 private rooms at least. I can make more than that. I can make a 5th room. It's got a place for the office staff. So ideally, I would have 6 people, possibly a couple in the back bedroom with the ensuite bathroom, and then different, maybe one room is big enough for the 2 beds, and then there'd be 2 private rooms. In Lake Forest, I can have 6 people, but you have to check with your city if you're interested in doing this. That's your first step, is calling them and saying, hey, this is what I want to do, and how many people can I have, and what are the steps?
And so then approximately what would be charged? Just hypothetically, what would the numbers be? And I just want to show people the difference, and I'm going to give a demonstration for HomWork as well, that why, besides the fact of being able to serve, but what are some of the other financial differences that it could make? So that house traditionally was rent for, how much is this to a single family?
Okay, if I were to rent it for a single family here in this area, crazy enough, I could get $3,500 or more because of the location and the size of it. But if I were to do the independent living home or other group home, it's going to be anywhere between $1,800 and $2,400 a bed. So now the back room I could charge a whole lot more for, because it's a huge room. It's got the private bathroom and all that. You could probably get about $4,500 a month. And we're just talking about independent living. We are not talking about assisted living. I have a friend who charges $7,000 a bed for assisted living. In this area, he can have 6 people. It's a beautiful home, but he made it clean and beautiful, and they have programs like music programs. They have a hospice room and all this stuff,
right.
And that's a lot of money. But people can get it based on the area and the programs that you have. What kind of staffing do you have? This is not going to be just your typical house, because I toured a lot of these houses, and I'm thinking, I don't want to be in that one or that one or that one, because they were run by the owner or operator, and that's not something I want to do too. Understand that I would own it. I'd own the business. I'd run the business, but I'm not going to be in there servicing the people. So you have to get very nurturing people, but the money is there. The national average for assisted living is $3,400 per bed. I understand.
All right, so even if it's 3,000 times 6,
yeah,
there's your numbers, and that's the nurse pay. So that's exactly the reason why I lead to that, is that's what we're doing in HomWork. It's a news company, and our intention is to acquire luxury style houses and build out the bedrooms to be live work suites. So for women, professional women, business women, to live in full-time, part-time, or drop-in. And so one of the houses that we have our eyes on, for example, is this 5-bedroom, 6-bath in Vegas. And traditionally, that house will rent out for $6,400. But we can rent out 2 of the bedrooms for $3,200 a month. So they're already, we're at break even, we're at $6,400. Then we can rent out the other 2 bedrooms, even for $3,000 to $6,000 additional. And then we would rent out a drop-in room where people would just stay for a couple of days, a couple of weekends, and even under $200 a night, 50% occupancy, that's almost another $3,000. So at the end of the year, when you do your numbers, allotting for expenses and taxes and insurance and everything, a single family, you'd net about $5,000, give or take. At our house, it's almost $101,000. So that same property, same basic mortgage, taxes, and insurance. The only thing that would change possibly is your utilities, which is not extreme because if you had a single family with 3 or 4 or 5 kids, you're going to burn up a lot of utilities and washing machines and dishwashers and things of that type. So that's the difference in being able to utilize what you're doing and changing the use of a house. So for those who have a property, who don't know what to do with it or need some more ideas with it, these are things that would, that are definitely, like you mentioned, that there's so many different options to be able to do. And that's what impresses me and fascinates me about real estate. So you've got the investment and now you've got a business. And you're a great businesswoman because you have a couple of different opportunities that you're working with. So share with us again now, real estate, we're making it sound very glorious and glamorous. So there's the good and the bad of everything. What has been the best thing that you've gotten from real estate? And it's a short period of time, only 3 years, and you've done a lot for that period of time.
Well, first off, I have to say the income has been pretty magnificent, or the revenue, because there's a difference between revenue, because you have overhead, and what your net profit. And do you have a partner or do you not? How many people are you splitting that piece of pie with? But I think that it's been a great learning experience for me to do the change of use, because I had never really done a lot of rehab before. And because we had to do it on a dime, I learned how to do a lot of stuff that I never thought I would be able to do. I'm not saying I'm totally interested in it anymore as far as the fixing and flipping, but it's been interesting. I think on the downside, I have a problematic toilet in the Costa Mesa property, and that sucker has caused me, a lot of stress. So don't think it's just easy breezy, people. You do have to take the bad with the good. Luckily, the good does outweigh it, and I'm looking at doing 10 more short-term rentals here in the next 6 months. I want to move a little bit slowly. I know. Mm-hmm. I've got investor backing, so I think that's been a really good experience too, is that I know how to raise private capital now, and it's not nearly as hard as one might think. It just boils down to conversations. So learning the skills that I have, I think that's been a really upside to me, because I like learning anyway. So.
Well, you said a couple of things that are really valuable and great takeaways. One is the fact that you looking for properties where the sellers are motivated. So a motivated seller is one that's willing to open the conversation and be open to change of uses or creative ideas of financing. You also mentioned seller financing, which means that it speaks to us who don't have all the money and need to find some other ways of being able to be creative with your financing. And then hugely is the investors, because even in HomWork, that's where we're at now in that cycle, and it's the learning experience. I've never done it before in my businesses. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 12, but never raised money for my business. It's always bootstrapped it. But I don't want to, because I want us to be able to explode and go bigger and faster and be even better than I could possibly do alone. So those are the points. And then the fact that you realize that too, it's glamorous and it's wonderful, but you do got to get your hands dirty every now and again with real estate. So you just got to be prepared to get that hammer out if necessary, get that mop out if necessary, do what you have to do, because I think it's extremely fascinating that here's an asset that, you can have for long term that can bring you hundreds and thousands, possibly millions of dollars that you can get somebody else to pay for it. Because I don't know many other investments, stocks or anything else that somebody else is actually going to pay for my investment. So that's how I look at it. That's how I handle the tenants, the tantrums, and the toilets, is that here's a person that's willing to pay for it so that I'll reap the benefits from long term so I can deal with this. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I have raised money for prior businesses before I knew how to do it officially, and it was a whole lot harder. In fact, I was involved in trying to raise funds. And I say trying to, because I was never successful at raising the funds for movies. And anyway, so I learned how to do it in different ways. And now I know how to do it for real estate. And it does just boil down to a conversation, the interest level on each side. And it's not that you have to take an asset in the change of use place. You can just lease properties from people as well, which I'm getting ready to try. That's how I'll be doing the 10 quickly, is to not take the asset in this case, but just take the cash flow and split off that cash flow and any of the benefits with those investors. I'm blessed to have people now contacting me, and that's what happens over time too. When they get to know what you're doing, they're like, "Oh, we're interested," So wish me luck on that one. I just have to find 10 more properties now, people. So, in Orange County, California.
Well, we'll put the word out. We'll put it out because we're looking as well. So we'll be get on that road together, Sandra. And so also, I want to make note of another book that you have, which I find really exciting. What's the name of that?
Well, I have 2 books out. One of it's on change of use, and the title is really long. So I'll tell you what, it's basically how you make $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, and $9,000 a month by changing the use of your property. And I can give people a free copy if they hit me up on thebathrobeinvestor.com. Just send me a note, or thebathrobeinvestor@gmail.com. I also have written just recently, it's called The Bathrobe Investor's No Bullshit Guide. No bullshit guide to funding, finding, and facilitating short-term rental properties. And I'm giving a freebie away if they want to go to www.thebathrobeinvestor.com/5-star. You can take away a 5-star guide. So how to get the 5-star reviews if you're doing the short-term rentals, or if you're just interested in learning how. And I'd be happy to give them a free copy of my book, but you have to hit me up by Gmail.
Okay, and that information will be in the description, so don't worry if you didn't write it down, it'll be available to you. Well, I want to thank you so much, your inspiration to me, and I want to thank our listeners today. And remember, we're looking for investors, we're looking for members, we're looking for hosts, we're looking for properties and realtors, we're just looking for it all, because that's part of it, being able to do together, getting a team together out there on the streets. It makes it happen. So thank you, Sandra, for sharing your expertise and your time. And I want to thank you for watching us today. And go visit HomWork, HomWork.com. And that's where you can live where you work where you live, anywhere in the world. And until we meet again, stay empowered.